All right, guys. So I wasn't sure if I'd get a chance to watch the show this week, but I did. So I enjoyed it. It was a good episode. Gave me plenty to talk about, think about. What is it? Episode 4 of season 9 of Alone. I'm gonna jump right in. Of course, first the show Benji, and he gets his beaver. I'm sure that was a long sleepless night. Wondering if he was gonna recover his beaver in the morning. But I know after I shot the moose and I went, you don't want to chase after something you shoot right away. You want to give it an hour or two to kind of calmly bleed out. So I went back home, back to my shelter, and skinned a rabbit and tried to pass the time. I got to tell you, it was the longest hour of my life. Just really wanted to get out and see if I could find that thing and maul the more overnight, waiting to see if he recover it. But he goes out in the morning and finds it pretty quickly, so that's good. Beavers, it's great meat. It's really fatty. I mean, you see this on the episode. It tastes a lot like beef. It's delicious. It can be wormy. You want to cook it well, but it's a great meat. And it sure takes the pressure off. Benji's been doing a good job of providing, at least from what they show. He's been getting a lot of food. He seems to be confident that he is, so things are going well for him with that beaver. He's going to be really sitting well. I hope he doesn't get sick. Obviously, in the preview they have somebody saying like, "Oh, I don't want to die, but I don't want to go home," or something. So I don't know if that's him or somebody else, but definitely people getting sick this season according to the previews. So I hope he can avoid that, because aside from that, he's doing really well. He definitely, I can't tell if he does this or not initially, but it looks like he does in the end. Use that gut pile as a bait pile right away for bear. I personally would probably put that gut pile in a pile, and then build a little tree stand that I could sleep on, not within archery range, and then I would just stay there the whole time. I wouldn't leave that gut pile. But it is interesting, they have game cameras that they can use. We actually couldn't on our season. They didn't have screens on them, and I believe we were told we couldn't even use the game cameras, to track game. But without the screen, you couldn't anyway. But they have that this season, and that's quite an advantage. A little jealous. No, but that he has a good idea, putting his smelly stuff, his scent bag, everything out, putting the game camera up. He's obviously a great hunter, got the right mindset for it. If I would have done anything different, it's like I would have definitely stuck to that gut pile like a magnet, basically, until the bear comes. And it looks like a big bear came. It's hard to tell exactly how many days it took it, but it didn't look long by what it was eating. So I'd imagine he could have slept there a night or 2 or 3 and just had a shot at that bear. But he does build a smoker. I'm never a fan of making smokers out of branches. I've done it a bunch before. They're so porous that it's hard to really concentrate that smoke. That's why I use a shelter on my for my moose and stuff. But it works. It does put a nice patina on it. Then the fun part about his episode with Benji here is he mentions Roland, bringing up that he wants to last longer than 100 days. And I read about it online because I watched this episode after other people have, and it seemed like Benji was getting a lot of flack for being cocky and arrogant and this and that. But honestly, the way he said it, I don't think it didn't come off to me as being that arrogant. He's confident. He's doing real well. So, but about the 100 days, it's such a, really, Roland's the only person that's been even given the opportunity to stay 100 days. Every other winner has been taken when second place quits. So it's really like the 77 days I was out there. That's how long basically Wonia was out there. It didn't have anything to do with how long I could stay. So even after season 6 ended at 77 days, I can't tell you how excited I was and how unexpected. Again, I really thought, and you've all heard this, I'm sure, but I really thought I was going to go 140 plus days, and I had the food to get there, and I was just cruising along at day 77. It ended, and I was so overjoyed. I will say, in the back of my mind, you know, at that time, 89 days was the record. I thought, you know, for sure our season was going to go longer than that. And so I thought basically we had to stay, well, like I said, 140 days was what I had in mind. I figured I could win if I lasted that long. And there was a tinge when it won. I told my wife this, but I was like, I wish it would have gone a little longer, because I just felt like it hadn't gotten hard yet. And but that is definitely just your ego, and you can happily ignore your ego and not suffer for the worse for it. But I definitely 100 days for me on season 6 would have been very easy, especially knowing that it would have ended at 100 days. Because like I said, I had 60 pounds of fish sitting right there. 23 more days with 60 pounds of fish, I would have been stuffed the whole time. And that's not even to mention my couple hundred pounds of moose meat, all the moose lard I had, you know, bunch of rabbits, a full wolverine, squirrels. You know, I had a ton of food, but with the unknown time horizon, you have to ration that food to hopefully get you, you know, I was thinking through 140 days, maybe through the winter, if I could come up with more successful ice fishing, perhaps get another large animal, which the only thing on my list was a muskox. We were allowed 1 moose, 1 wolverine. I got those. Bears were hibernating. So muskox was the last potential large game I had a chance at. And I was told by the owners of the lodge that a couple weeks after the show ended, that's typically when the muskox herd would move through my territory. So it's really too bad I didn't get a chance to stay 100 days. I might have been able to get the muskox, moose, wolverine. It would have been pretty awesome. But all that to say, yeah, nobody else has had a chance. Nobody's else been given the chance to stay 100 days. So I do have a little bit of a like, oh man, it wasn't quite apples to apples, if you know what I mean. But we'll see. Benji mentions it. Hopefully, I don't know, he's doing really well so far. I've said this on prior reviews, but showing so much success makes me nervous for him, because that's kind of not the typical pattern I've noticed. But they always are mixing it up too, so maybe they're leaning into it to try to throw you for a loop. Timojin gets his bed built. That's good. I'm still really curious about how, I need to ask him if he watches this. You have to tell us how your Dakota fire pit worked. I wonder if, you know, when you have a fire elevated up there, it kind of radiates the heat in all directions, as long as you have the smoke filtered out. I feel like that might be nice for drying a lot of things, whereas in the pit, the heat's just coming out of the top. I wonder if you get as much radiant heat for drying stuff. That's would be my question for him, if he liked living with his Dakota fire pit, or if he would maybe do something else next time. So good question for you, Timojin. With those primitive shelters, you know, you can only keep the ambient temperature in the shelter so high. So the best thing to keep a hot shelter like that is exactly what Pablo did, is build a wood stove. But that's not everybody doesn't get all those cans. So anyway, I'm just real curious. He finds spruce cones that the squirrels have been eating. You can actually harvest a pine nut, a spruce nut, out of spruce cones. They're real small, like poppy seeds basically, but you can harvest them out, and if you get a whole bunch of pine cones and you find that there's nuts in some of them, you get them in a shirt, shake them up, get all those, as many as you can out, and you kind of boil up a soup that tastes like pine nut soup basically. And I should maybe I should make a video on how to do that. So that's what the squirrels are finding in there, and I'm going to be curious to see if that works well as bait. So smart on Timojin to notice what they're eating and then try to incorporate into his traps. I see he built, his spring poles. A lot of times when you build the spring poles, you want to strip all the branches off, which he didn't do, to give it a little more spring. And if you have your pole sitting there like this and it snows, that's going to cause a sag and unhook your spring poles. So that is a little thing I noticed. That said, it's easy to critique. When you're out there and you're tired and hungry, you're conserving your calories, trying to do kind of the minimum amount you can effectively do. So I don't blame him for not stripping the poles. In the same way, I didn't, when I built my food cache, I didn't box it all in and make it Wolverine proof, which would have been smart had I known. But again, you're trying to get by with the minimum effective amount of work you can do. So easy to criticize, but when you're really there, efficiency is so important, especially when you're hungry. So, but I appreciate it as, no slurping medical tips, keeps throwing those out there, which is funny. And then, and nice shot, he gets his grouse, which nothing, the best. It's gonna taste delicious, no doubt about that, after not having any food for that long. Whew. Terry, I like his shelter. It looks real similar to what I built. He's got a good, simple thing going on there. And I appreciate his honesty about his struggles. He's such a good dude, and it really comes across in the whole show. I really liked his, sneaking in on that beaver swimming back and forth. He put up the camera in such a cool location, sneaks in, intense, and then shows a lot of restraint, waiting for the perfect opportunity to take the shot. It's such a, you really have to intuit your moments when you're hunting, because sometimes you'll not take a shot and then kick yourself like, man, I should have taken it while I had it. That happened to me the first time I could have shot the Wolverine. I didn't quite have the shot, so the next time I wasn't quite sure, I just sent the arrow in, and that's why it deflected through, pinned it in the leg, but wasn't a perfect shot, but it got the job done sometimes. But there is nothing worse than shooting an animal, wounding it, and then losing it. So Terry shows a lot of restraint, a lot of good ethical hunting, and ultimately it pays off. He goes out there and gets it a few mornings later. So good for him. He had to swim out in the cold water, got a nice, they're healthy for you, so got a nice cold water treatment going. And then I kind of noticed, as he's going through all those, like, oh man, getting out in the water, he's always kind of in a similar mental state that I found myself in out there, which is awesome. It's kind of this constant low level state of prayer, just like, Lord, be with me as you do this job or that job. And you're just always, it's a really neat mental place to be in, this like constant conversation in that way. Anyway, I appreciated kind of noticing that in him and relating to it. And great to see his work pay off. Really just a genuinely good guy. I'm glad to see him get that beaver. Hopefully it keeps him out there a while, because I like watching him. Then we get Jaeger. Jaeger's got about the worst body style you can have for a lone. He's a big dude with a, what is he, 6'6" or something. Fairly muscular, fairly lean. So terrible body style for a lone, but and it doesn't help that he took on Jaeger's body style requires a lot of calories, and you have to be incredibly calorie focused, like procure calories. That's really what matters for someone like that. And he might not have learned that until he got out there and got into a project that was, not calorie efficient. And by the time, you get that sunken cost in, you don't know when to quit. Like, it would have been easier. He talks about, maybe I should adjust to something else. Man, just run a guideline, throw your tarp over it, sleep under that, and try to procure some food, because you don't really see how much he is hunting and fishing and how much effort he is putting in there. The show gives the impression that he's just spending almost all his time building the shelter, which of course it's just not going to pay off. And a lot of those lessons you don't have an opportunity to learn until you're on the show and it's going on. So he is in the show already 2-3 weeks in, and you're realizing, oh man, this work is way harder than I thought when you're hungry, and et cetera, et cetera. It's just too late for him, but he makes the right decision. Like when the writing's on the wall, I just don't think, no need to kill yourself, no need to do permanent damage, and you got to override your ego at some point if you're just not seeing it go well, and just be like, you know what, did my best, but it's not working this time. So he leaves, and no shame in that. And you know, again, I appreciate a guy leaving when he's put in his effort. You can see the writing on the wall, and it's just, don't kill yourself. It is just money and ego. But Tom is the last guy we see, and he has a nice, I noticed they just showed him a little bit, showed his little shelter spot, but I do like his little hillside he's got to build into, which is always good to use natural features if you can when building your shelter, and it looks like he's got a really good one to use, so that'll save him some work. He had a ton of those whiskey jacks trying to harass him, I guess, but so did I. And up north, honestly, that's one thing people don't account for. It's like, why didn't I just pull my meat up in a tree and hang it in a tree? Why build a whole food cache and this and that? And it's like, it's actually, the birds take a lot of fat. They'll pick all the exterior fat off of your meat. There'd be 20 birds sitting there pecking meat and fat if you don't get it covered. So I actually did try to hang my meat up in trees by wrapping them in branches and pulling them up in trees, but those birds will weasel their way in there and then just do this all day, eating that much fat every peck. It's not fun to watch. So that's why, one of the reasons why just pulling it up in a tree long term isn't a good idea. Those little whiskey jacks, they are camp robbers. Just something you might not think of up there, but does catch a beautiful trout. And I noticed he talked about how much his trout would be worth in the right location. I thought that a lot. You know, I caught this 20+ pound lake trout, catch a bunch of them too, but just on the one in particular, I thought, man, there's 20+ pounds of trout, lake fresh, caught. So that's at least $20 a pound. That's a $400 fish right there, and I'm just chowing it down like that. So you can't buy that in civilization, but up there it's in plenty. So anyway, I thought about that too, supply and demand. All that to say, I did like this episode. 2 beavers, that's awesome. We'll probably see more. I imagine, you know, where those beavers are running, there's going to be more. And yeah, it's good to see success. Got me thinking about different things. And again, thanks for watching. I think this time it is my last one for some weeks, because June 27th I head up into the mountains. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. The most notably unproduced and poorly edited alone reviews you can find on YouTube, but as long as they're worth watching, I appreciate it. Cheers, guys.